petition.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Every now and then New Zealand seems to go through a constitutional crisis. Call it a crisis, call it an inflection point. We had one in 1976 when Rob Muldoon turned up after the 1975 election and purported to suspend the provisions of the New Zealand Superannuation Act and said to public servants, no need to pay any more, I've decreed it. The High Court sorted that out in Fitzgerald and Muldoon, and I'm proud to say I have a copy of the judgment in my office. After the 1984 election, again, Mr Muldoon, had to be sorted out by the National Party caucus, and that led, of course, to the Constitution Act of 1986. Now we have a similar crisis where either through conspiracy or a cock-up, and I'm one, Madam Chair, that tends towards the conspiracy element of this, where the government has sought to entrench a matter of public policy into New Zealand law. And it was a constitutional collusion, a collaboration between the Green Party and the Labour Party, and frankly, I thought better of the Greens. Because I tell you something for free, Rob Donald and Jeanette Fitzsimons would not have gone along with this constitutional chicanery. Because here's the test. Here's the test. If the National Party had got up and said, 3 strikes is fundamentally important to the national government and the public policy of this country, and we're going to collaborate with ACT and put down into law that the 3-strike sentencing regime is so fundamental, so critical to the confidence that people have in the judicial system.
Point of order, Honourable Eugenie Sage.
Chair, other speakers in the debate have been reminded to stay on the SOP.
That's right. Can the member bring it back just to the entrenchment and this SOP?
If the national government of the time or a future national government had done this, the Greens would be up in arms. And I'm responding specifically to what Eugenie Sage raised in her speech, Madam Chair. They would be up in arms, and rightly so, because entrenching a matter of contentious public policy in law and making it more difficult for a future government or future parliament to repeal is wrong. So, my question for the Minister is a really simple one. What on earth were you thinking? What on earth possessed the government to think that this was appropriate or constitutional? And we have 3 particular concerns about this that I want the Minister to address. The first is the process point, done under urgency. That's right. And a long stretch of urgency. It's not correct that the government was trying to pass 24 bills, but they certainly were trying to get the House to deal with around 24 or maybe 25 bills at the time. And quite rightly, it was a long stretch, and there were people there in the House for that long stretch, and it's not appropriate that something so constitutionally significant should be dealt with in a long stretch of urgency. Second point is the point I've made around precedent. What precedent does entrenching a provision like this set into law? And I've made reference to other things that other governments might consider to be important. And the constitutional scholars have rightly made that point. And then the third point, Madam Speaker, is the undesirability of having non-constitutional provisions entrenched into law, because there are just 5 or 6 parts of our constitution that are entrenched, and that's at a 75% majority. Nothing else other than one provision of the Constitution Act 1986 and the Electoral Act 1993. And it is undesirable, as the Law Society pointed out, and various other public law commentators pointed out, to entrench non-constitutional provisions in legislation. So I have further questions for the Minister, Madam Chair, which is, how did this come about? Because what we have at the moment is like that Spider-Man cartoon. Everyone in the government pointing at everybody else and saying, oh, they're to blame. Jacinda Ardern says it's Nanaia Mahuta's fault. Nanaia Mahuta says, nothing to do with me, I'm blaming the Finance and Expenditure Committee. David Parker says, I've always been opposed to entrenchment. And then everybody just wants to hang on the Greens. And ultimately it was their SOP in the first place, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Call on Honourable David Parker.